When I was starting doing printmaking, I didn't expect that my prints are taking me all over the world. Honestly, I've seen most of the countries just because of my art.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Ronaldo Zambrano. Together, we speak to people from around the globe about their practice and passions in the field of print media and multiples. This episode of Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products. Speedball is thrilled to announce that they are extending their range of the beloved oil-based block printing ink. Partnering with Hello Print Friend host Ronaldo Zambrano to give the line a fresh new look, they have launched 10 rich color options in convenient 8-ounce cans. The ink is formulated to be permanent, waterproof, and archival, but provides easy cleanup with vegetable oil. Available now for purchase through Speedball's website. This episode is also brought to you by Legion Paper. Legion is a fine art paper company representing the best papers in the world. They either stock it, source it, or make it. With brands like Stonehenge, Somerset, Coventry, Reeves, Arches, and more, Legion is the best paper resource for every artist and printmaker's needs. Learn more about the variety of paper Legion stocks at www.legionpaper.com. My guest this week is Mehdi Darvishi. We catch up since his first appearance on the podcast as episode 7. That's right, episode 7. We talk about how the pandemic impacted his practice as an artist who relied on residency to get his work printed. What you can learn from the great artists of the world, coming to the U.S. for graduate school, and what the next few years at the Art Institute of Chicago might hold for him. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to get going to Chicago with Mehdi Darvishi. Hi, Medhi. How's it going?
Hi, I'm good, Miranda. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I feel like this is like a homecoming for Hello Print Friend having you back
Hello,
on.
Princess.
Which way back when it was called Pine Copper Lime, I interviewed you before I had even launched the podcast. You were not even in like the early days. You were in like the pre days when it was just this still incubating.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I think at that time you were in Australia
I
when I
was in
talked to you
Australia.
then, but you were still living in Tehran full time.
Exactly.
And yeah, and now 4 or 5 years on, we've been through a global pandemic. You've started graduate school. I've lived on 2 more continents. Like things have
Yeah,
happened to us.
yeah. I'm
So
actually going to many trips, many more residencies, and I'm really excited to share some of my experience in those places with the audiences and with my print friends.
I'm so glad. Yeah, this is I can't wait to catch up because we've gotten to be at different events together, but there's nothing like inviting someone to be on your podcast to make them sit down and talk to you for an hour just focused, which is what I love.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad.
And can you just introduce yourself to start people off and let people know the answer to the questions now of who you are, where you are, what you do?
I'm Mehdi Darvishi. I was born in a small town in Iran. I moved to Tehran, which is the capital country of city of Iran, and for my undergrad. And after that, I lived in Tehran. I established my own printmaking studio in Tehran, and I educated a lot of young Iranian printmakers. Yeah, and now I'm about to start a grad school program at the Art Institute of Chicago. And besides that, I've been traveling to many countries to do residencies and to be able to make prints.
Yeah, and you're currently at Gutenberg Arts, is that correct? In a residency as we speak.
Yes, I'm at a
Oh,
residency at Gutenberg Arts, and it's a 3-month residency, which is a great opportunity to be able to focus on a good body of work.
wonderful. So we got into a lot of your backstory, your early art experience, you're coming to printmaking, you're teaching yourself mezzotint on YouTube, all of that way back in episode 7
Yeah.
of the podcast. So I don't want to take too much time with it right now, but just in case someone doesn't want to go back and pause and go listen for an hour, maybe you could just give like a little bit of background on what it was like for you to grow up in a small town and know that you were an artist and come to understand that you were someone who was going to be a maker, who was going to be a creator and in the world of visual communication.
It just happened because I grew up in a city that I wasn't exposed to any museums, art exhibitions, nothing. And I just happened to see an art teacher who was kind enough to push us towards knowing more about the art history, about the artist. He was lending us art history books and cheering us to read more and more and get to know more about the art history. That was just the beginning. So I come from like an engineering family. All my siblings have gone to like engineering schools and majors, and I was gonna go to do an engineering program in computer science too. And it was like
Mm.
a week before the start of the classes that I said, no, my heart goes towards art, and I changed my
Wow.
major. Yeah, from very below zero, if that makes sense. I didn't have any resources, and I had no idea what's going to be expecting me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started, I wanted to do painting. We didn't have it at the school as a major, so I had to do graphic design. But I kept drawing and trying some very basic monoprints. And that was, I think, the beginning of my career. And later, when I could get into the painting program at University of Tehran, which is the most prestigious program in the country, I was really lucky to be exposed to some good professors and great galleries in Tehran. And obviously, a good printmaking professor, his name is Mehdi Darvishi, and I learned basic printmaking techniques like linocuts and etching and dry point. And later on the internet, I just happened to see a printmaking page on Facebook. It was International Mezzotint Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was in 2013, which the first time I saw mezzotint. And there was a store in town that I could buy a mezzotint rocker. But the funny thing is, when I got the rocker, I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know I have to move it to left and right.
Yeah.
So I started scratching the plates. I grounded the plate with just terrible scratches, and I made a print, called it mezzotint. And it was the beginning of my mezzotint career. Later, when I was on Facebook, I reached out to so many artists to know their ideas, to get some more information about their techniques. And there's a wonderful Thai mezzotint artist. His name is Kraisak Churachaisakul.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me a link on YouTube to Guy Langvin's demonstration on mezzotint. And it was a 9 minutes video. Basically, I learned everything that I needed from just that video. And later in 2015, it might be interesting that later in 2015, when I got that grand prize in the biennial in Trois-Rivières, and I was there to receive that grand prize, the first person who came to my hotel to pick me up and show me the city was Guy Langvin.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. What an arc. I mean, I remember when we've spoken before and one of the things that you and I talk about is this incredible power being an artist is to open doors, to make connections, to live a life that you might You might be like a little less stable than an engineer, but the things you get to do, the people you get to meet, the experiences that you have, I mean, at least for me, like they've been beyond my wildest dreams.
Absolutely. Miranda, I'm coming from a country that, unfortunately, because of all the political situation that's going on, the passport doesn't have a good value. We have to stay in line to get visas. But when I was starting doing printmaking, I didn't expect that my prints are taking me all over the world. I've
Hmm.
honestly I've seen most of the countries just because of my art, and I've been just making art, and it's been my art that's been connecting me to people, that's been taking me to all these countries, and that's why how I know you and a lot of my great friends.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
it's a friendly podcast, and I hope you don't mind that I'm telling some stories.
Please, that's what we're here for.
And last month, I was at Evan Summers' studio in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know him or not. He is a wonderful printmaker. And when I was there, I showed him my Facebook message that 11 years ago, I reached out to him on Facebook, sending him my works, asking his opinion about my work. And after, like, it was in 2019 when I went to China, and they told me that, hey, you're going to share your studio with someone. I hope you don't mind. I said, no, I don't mind. Who's the person? And I said, it's Evan Summer. It's
Uh-huh.
all these crazy stories that I've been following all these artists. And I happen to see them in a corner of the world that I don't expect. Like the first time that you were in Sydney and I was in Canberra in Australia,
Mhm.
I reached out to you. I knew you on Facebook, and I knew that you were the director of the print section of Davidson Galleries.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. So that is how I know all these people living in a tiny country with just a very basic internet. I
Mhm.
reached out to them, I built up my connection, and nowadays some of them are my really close friends.
I mean, it just makes me think like, what would you have done if you'd been born like 20 years earlier, right? Like without like pre-internet, pre-social media, it would have been a different world.
Absolutely, that is true. I had no idea what I could do because I've learned most of the things that I know in just the internet or through connections that I made using internet.
Mhm.
Nowadays I'm working on a project again the person and I'm just honored to get to know them and learn from them. In 2019, I was in China and I heard that the next time in a few months Praveen Pyongchampo is coming to China. I've been amazed by Praveen technique. So I organized another trip to go all the way to catch Praveen and learn from him.
Uh-huh. Beautiful.
I learned, I made a few small works, but I've been waiting for a good time, like my time now at Gutenberg, to focus on everything that I learned from Praveen. So now, as a messaging artist, I'm shifting on making woodcuts, and I'm so happy with them.
Oh, so are you doing that reduction
Yes.
woodcut
Yeah.
technique?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really excited to see what you're doing with that because Praween, his woodcuts almost have like a mezzotint feel to them. The way his use of light feels like a mezzotint, where he has these forms that are really created with lightness rather than darkness, and the rounded shapes and the softness of them.
Yeah.
So, oh, I'm super excited to see what you do.
Thank you. It looks like everything but woodcut. Because in
Hmm.
woodcut, you see a lot of mm, carving marks and all those textures. But the way that Praveen does, and nowadays a lot of Thai printmakers are making prints like that, just the way that he manages the layers to sit on top of each other and mesh together is a wonderful way that you can't get it in any other technique. but the way that Praveen does woodcut.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. That's so cool. So in your story, you end up going to university in Tehran, and then as we spoke to, you had a good period of your life where you were having the experience, you're going to residencies, you're learning from people, you're connecting with people, you're traveling, getting to do all this cool stuff.
Mhm.
At what point did you decide, I think I want an MFA? I think I want to go back. Like there's something that school is going to do for me or my for my practice or my career that I'm not getting just by living the artist life out in the world.
Yeah. It's the answer to this question might be a little bit complicated because there are a lot of stuff involved. Pandemic had a really major impact that it cut off everything that I had. Like I
Mhm.
was going from a country to another and I didn't have any problem. I had a lot of residencies and exhibitions lined up. And pandemic just stopped everything. And I was stuck in my country for a couple years. It had it bad impacts on me, but it brought up a lot of great things for me too.
Mm.
Like at the time that I got stuck in my country because I was traveling because I needed printmaking facility to be able to
Right.
create works, especially that I was working in a really large format for mezzotint that I wasn't able to even print them in my own country. So I
Mhm.
had to travel to different countries to be able to just keep working and producing works. And residencies give you sort of a focus that you can make a really good amount of work in a short time because they provide you everything if you're lucky, and you have all your time and focus to put into the work and create a really large body of work. So before pandemic, I was traveling with just one plate in my suitcase from a
Mhm.
country to another. It's my recent piece. I traveled. I started in Iran, and then I went to Australia, two times China, and then I finally could finish it in America. And just to go back to the conversation, pandemic cut all those connections and trips that I had lined up. And I got stuck in my own country without being able to travel or to be able to make work. And after pandemic, again, because of the political situation of my country, it was really hard to go to other countries. And the only way that I could travel was on a student visa. Besides all the limits that being on a student visa is lifting from me, is that I feel like I have my own connections in the art world. And I'm always open to more connections that I can make. But on my own, I can only do so much. And my art practice expanded after pandemic. Like I did wood sculptures, I did ceramics, I did glassworks, I did a lot of paintings, and I realized that I'm at a certain point of my career that I might think I'm doing the right thing, but what other people can think of about my work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That
So,
you it sound like you were in a point where you'd been working in this really focused way,
mhm.
but it had only been from your point of view because
Yes,
you'd just been traveling and really being on your own and working with other people, but having kind of an isolated experience of the working artist. Yeah.
yeah. But at this point, especially going to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, I know that I'm going to be criticized and exposed to a lot of great artists and critiques that can open up some doors in my life. And that is something that I think I really need because now is my art practice is really expanded. It's not just print anymore, and I have a lot of different things that sometimes are related to my prints and sometimes they're not. And getting to hear and know other people's opinion would help me a lot to sort of advance the concepts, or getting to a point that I can put everything together, or at least remove some of them and focus on some new things. And I think a grad school should be able to help me with that.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's interesting because what it sounds like what you're looking for really is critique.
Yes,
And I think that for some people and some artists, depending on where they are in their career and their practice, that is something that is scary. Like they're not really, they don't necessarily see it as an opportunity for growth. And I know that like getting feedback can be always challenging, but when you're in a place where you're really open to it, it is such an opportunity for growth.
absolutely. I believe in it. And you I don't know if it's right to say it. I don't know if I don't absolutely I don't mean to brag about myself or anything. But if I wanted to focus only on the thing that I was doing, mezzotint,
Hmm.
I could be a successful mezzotint artist.
Hmm. You are a successful mezzotint artist. I've seen your work. I get awards at the International Mezzotint Festival. Like you are.
Thank you. But honestly, I didn't want it to repeat myself.
Mm,
That's why I took the risk. I was talking to a friends, and they were asking me, "So, what's your project for the next 2 years?" I said, "I still don't know. I might drop whatever I have and start something from the scratch without even knowing what I'm going to do." I start with it's again another story is that in pandemic I got stuck in my hometown. I
hmm.
went back to live close to my parents for a few months, and then COVID situation and then embassy situation made me staying there for a whole year.
Wow.
And I went there to start painting. And there was one day that a piece of wood was sitting in my backyard. I started carving on it. And I ended up making more than 30 wooden sculptures without having any plans for them. So it started from really nowhere. And at the end, it got to a point that I can call it a series of work, that it has a title, it has a concept. And I believe that I believe, I don't say that it's a must, but I believe that every artist should have the courage to drop whatever they have, take new risks, and open new doors.
Mm, yeah, that's such an important idea because I think that getting any kind of success or recognition, whether that's economic, like your work is selling, or academic, you're getting awards and opportunities, that's hard to do in the art world. And it seems like it would be really easy to just stay in that. Once you've found that, it seems like it could be difficult to walk away from it because so much of what artists are told is you're lucky if you get anything as an artist.
That is true, but I think it's always great to have a look at some of the great artists that we know them,
Mm,
what they have done. We have some artists that have done just one way, have been successful, and they've made a really wonderful career. But I had the chance to see, for example, a show of this great artist. Her name is Bourgeois, Louis Bourgeois.
uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
And it was in Germany. It was a really nice retrospective of her work. And you could see the incredible amount of risk that she took in her work, technique wise, concept wise, shape wise, whatever that you can imagine. And then she ended up making those fantastic sculptures that are unique in the art history. And
Yeah.
believe that if she didn't take all those risks and change and everything, she wouldn't have had that much success and that great quality of work that she ended up having at the end of her lifetime.
Mm.
Again, it's to me, but it's easy to make a really small safety area for yourself, safety zone for yourself, and just keep just moving inside that little circle. We in Persian we have a story that's really beautiful. It's about the life of a tiny little black fish that has the dream of seeing the ocean while they're living in a tiny pond.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever they talk about, they say, "Hey, you're comfortable here. Stay. Come on. Who cares? Who cares what's going out? What's going on outside?" The fish takes the risk and ends up seeing the real ocean and seeing the difference about the scales, the everything that's happening out there, and you're just happy with a little safety zone that you've made for yourself. And after a while, I was thinking that even my work might get even boring for myself. Just making those dead bodies on rooms and then
Mm-hmm.
evolving the concept, but how far I could go using just that concept.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be the little fish in the ocean. Yeah. and and so something that I'm always curious about with any creative undertaking and when you're in the process of getting feedback about what it is, I don't think it's a good practice to obviously just take what you hear blindly. So any person's opinion, like if somebody said to you, Medhi, dead bodies. Come on, man. No one wants to look at that. Do something else. I mean, like
Yeah.
you wouldn't take that seriously, right? But how do you know as an artist when you're getting feedback what you feel like is there to shape you in a positive way and what's kind of noise or maybe something that's not helpful? What's that balance and how do you recognize it as an artist?
Again, it's a really difficult question to answer, and I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
that we're having this conversation. Uh, you know, mm, to me, first of all, let me go back to my prints. I did a lot in my prints that I got to a point that I felt like I'm not being creative anymore. Whatever I do would be repeating the idea that I had in my reduction mezzotins. I don't know if you remember or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like creating a plate, then destroying it in some stages to make another process that it was referring to the artist's life.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point that I couldn't add anything to that. If I wanted to do, I could just do it in a different way. But the idea was the same, the process was the same, and the concept was the same. And that was when I just dropped mezzotint and I started experimenting a variety of mediums. So that is why I did, again, I went back to try etching, aquatint, woodcut, and ceramics, sculptures, glassworks, because I said, okay, let me at least expand my toolbox first. Then I'll think how and why I need to use a certain material. Now I'm at a point that I know that for the next 2 years, I'll be making paintings
Mm-hmm.
because I have experienced a lot. I know more than like 4 years ago that we talked, and I was just talking about prints as like just a medium that I'm focused on. And in this, when I say painting, I can involve like multiple place lithography. I can involve woodcuts with it. And it can be like a paint on canvas real painting, or it can be similar to my interactive paintings. It would be a broad area that I experienced and I pick and choose things that I want to be and I don't want to be. And
Hmm.
in this process, if someone came up with a suggestion that I could go back to my studio, think about it, and realize that yes, this is helpful for the idea that I have in mind now, that is the time that I take the critique.
Mm.
Yeah,
Like if it can kind of feel like another tool in the toolkit, or it kind of is
exactly.
like a missing puzzle piece that you're already looking for. It's not someone just
Exactly.
coming in and tearing down what you're doing.
Yeah,
That makes
no,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of course, people's opinion are important, but not that important that I change my whole art career that I spent
Hmm.
on 15 years and I change it in like a second with someone's just critique. No, it never has happened to me like that. Never.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like looking at the art history. When you go look at even contemporary artists or even classic artists, you pick and choose. Something from someone can be helpful to make your idea better. Yes, I'll pick it. If not, I won't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As we're talking and trying to find our way through to all these abstract philosophical art ideas, part of the reason why I love talking with you, you'll always get right in it with me, is it strikes me about how I feel like as long as I've known you, you've always sort of had a bit of a long view when it comes to your practice. You've always had a way of thinking about your work, not just in this like limited, like this is what's in front of me right now, but also where am I going to be in 5 years or 10 years, or this idea of I'm going to go out and I'm going to learn all these different techniques and then see what trickles through for my practice. Where do you think that comes from for you? I mean, you've got like this patience in the practice itself, in the fact that you're holding on to a mesotent and you're waiting until you can go do a residency to print it, to get one more layer so you can go work on the mesotent plate again. I mean, is it something that's just a part of your personality? Was it coming up with the mesotent process that made that happen? What is it about you and your work that gives you that perspective?
I think there are a few things involved. First of all, probably being from Iran.
Mm,
When I was there, when I was growing up, especially that I wasn't coming from a background that has money. I knew that for everything that I want to earn, I have to work so hard to get it. Even nowadays,
mm,
you know, in the last 2 months of my stay close to New York, I have experienced the worst moments of my life plus the happiest moments of my
mm,
life. It always comes and goes, and I'm used to it. And if I go back and show you the sign-in sheet that we have in this studio, I've been constantly coming to the studio and I've been spending 8 to 11 hours a day focusing on my work. Because I know that I've been going through a lot in my lifetime. And at the end, the only thing that remained for me was my artwork. So I'm always hopeful that my work finds a way to the world outside. Besides that, I look at the artists in the art history. Not almost 90% of them, at least, haven't had like a calm life that you get up, you dress, you go to your studio, have your coffee, do some painting, sculpture, whatever, go back to your home and have a wonderful life. Having an unstable life, unfortunately, is part of living as an artist. And I've been witnessed through a lot of tough situations that I've been going through, that those are the moments that you don't you shouldn't back out. You stay, you should be loyal to the goals that you have, make it through it, and it would find you a way. that that finally brings you sort of a satisfaction that you couldn't get it staying in your safety zone.
I totally hear what you're saying, and that it's what I heard in your answer was that you grew up not expecting instant gratification. You
Yes.
grew up knowing that you have to work for something that you want, and that
Yeah.
it could be something that takes a long time. It could mean a great deal of dedication,
Yeah.
because you can't just go ask someone for it. You've
Yeah.
got to get it yourself. Yeah.
Another answer to your question is that I have a definition of an artist in my brain. When I think about an artist, I think an artist, we say in Persian, we say is not an ocean with a depth of a tip of a finger.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
There's not an ocean that has the depth of the tip of a finger?
The artist is not supposed to be like an ocean with a depth of a tip of a finger.
Yeah,
Does that
yeah.
make sense? You can
Yeah.
be, but you can't be deep enough. So to myself, I decided to focus on every medium that I want for at least a couple years to get enough knowledge that if you ask me now, say, hey, do you want to make a wooden sculpture? I would absolutely say yes. Because I focused for at least a couple years and tried all the ins and outs about that medium, that material, that now I have the confidence to use it in my artwork without lack of ability to
Mhm.
use the material in the correct way. Okay. So I don't know if I have mentioned it in my other podcasts, but I totally believe that technique is like an alphabet for the artist. When you know it, it's just an alphabet, but it's important how you use it. You can be a poet using the exact same alphabet that someone's saying and you don't understand anything about it.
Mm.
Does that make
Mhm.
sense? That
Yeah.
is how I say an artwork could have a technique, but the technique is not the only thing that an art needs to have. The technique is like an alphabet for a poet. The way that the poet uses the alphabet is important, not just the alphabet.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. Yeah. It's beautiful. So, when do you start at the Art Institute of Chicago, and what are you kind of most looking forward to about a new chapter in your art making?
I'm gonna start in no later than 2 months.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna start at the beginning of September, and I'm moving to Chicago at mid-August. As again I say, a few years ago I moved back to my hometown to start painting, and I ended up making wooden sculptures.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to the Art Institute of Chicago. I have a really solid painting project in my mind that I'm looking forward to start making it as soon as I make it there. But as an artist, I really don't know what's going to happen next. And I might get there and the situation, the studios, everything, even the museums that I'm exposed to might have an effect on my art practice that I don't want to do painting anymore. I always try to keep my art career as free as if anything happened and I needed to change the direction, I don't mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I know that I'm going to be focusing on painting. I have an idea that I've been holding on to it, like my mezzotint plates. I've been holding on to that idea for maybe 7 years. I've been waiting for a situation to be able to start making that project. It's going to be a huge body of work,
Mhm.
and I'm really excited to start it. But if something happened, and in the next podcast I told you, no, I went there, started making like metal sculptures. It shouldn't be a surprise because I'm just saying it now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Do you think that printmaking is going to find its way back into your
yeah.
practice in the
Part of
future?
that project is absolutely going to be woodcut, and
Oh, cool.
I'm thinking about four color lithographs because I had the chance to work with Professor Ryan O'Malley. I did some experiments. It was really good. I did some tiny lithos, and now I have an idea that what I can get from litho and how I can use it in that broad project that I was talking about.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. Had you done litho before in all of your travels, or was litho just
No,
something you worked with
first,
Ryan?
I just started doing litho with Ryan, and that was just the beginning. And he was kind enough to help me a lot getting through the process and making and printing and everything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
probably a lot of the print friends know, but there is a way in lithography to do it in a manie noir, in like similar to mezzotint, that you make the stone black and then you scrape and burnish it back. So I tried a way like that. Then I printed on black paper with black ink on black paper, and I used bleach to bring back the light.
Oh my
It was a
gosh.
really, yeah, it was a really interesting process that
Did that
I,
work? Did you like the images on the other side that was successful?
oh yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share them with you.
Oh, I love that. We'll have to post those when we post this interview because I'd love to see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like the way that you come at the different art media, it's always has this looking for like, well, how can we go farther? You know,
Absolutely.
you're always like, it's not just like you're not gonna just take Medhi, this is how we do litho. You'll be like, yeah, 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 but like, what can we do with litho? You know?
That is sort of my personality. That is true.
Mm.
And of course, Ryan's advice has been helping me a lot. But plus that, when I started printmaking, I started printing with white ink on black paper. And for years, I was happy that, hey, I'm doing something special. And just a few weeks ago, I found a book on Chuck Close. And I realized that he's done that way better than me. Way better than me. Really. It was upsetting, but it was sort of making me happy as well. That I was isolated in Iran when I was doing that. I had no idea what's going on in the world outside. It was really before the internet was so common. We had to go to the school's lab to be able to use some of their computers with that slow internet that we had at the time. But yes, I learned etching and aquatint from my professor. I went back home. I was thinking, and I remember bothering him, calling him, asking a few questions. And I went back. I had my sketches to start, you know, printing with white ink on black paper. And as you absolutely know, to be able to print with white ink on black paper, you have to do everything in an inverted tonality. So you have to
Hmm.
negative on the plate, and once you ink it with white and print it on black paper, it would turn to a real image. And that's how I started making my prints at the beginning of my career.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. I'll definitely like have to go look for those because that sounds very, very exciting. What advice would you have for students who are just starting out? We have a lot of young artists who listen to the podcast. As someone who's you've done like the working artist gig where you're running around from different residencies, working with galleries, showing things, getting awards, being a student, being a graduate student now, what did you wish you knew when you were just starting out in your undergrad after having lived the life of an artist for 15 years?
There are a few things that I can mention as an advice. First of all, is taking basic drawing really serious. I believe that as long as you know drawing, you can do really well in any medium. You just need to learn some technical details. But the base for making any sort of visual art to me is knowing drawing. So once you know drawing, you can use it in litho, you can use it in etching, you can use it in everything. The second thing is to read as much as you can about the art history and what's going on around you. I think it's very important to know the art history from the past, like knowing about Renaissance artists would help you to get to know what is happening and how the art has been evolving to get to this point. And then getting to know what is going on in the contemporary world. I
Mm.
don't know if you can just come from out of nowhere and jump into the contemporary art. We have some naive artists that were not educated, but they're very little. When you read about the great artists, you see that, hey, they know philosophy, they know psychology. Every artist in a different way. I don't say that every artist is a philosopher, but you see that besides the art that they've been educating, they've been feeding their brain from different source of knowledge. And that's how when you talk to them, they have something to say that you don't hear it from ordinary people. And then another advice that I believe is very important is that from the very beginning, instead of focusing on exhibiting your work, you need to focus on making your work. Once the work
Mm.
is made, it makes its own way to the world outside. You don't have to push for it.
I love that the make good work and
Yeah,
people will notice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah, I believe in that.
Mm. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah,
Well,
honestly, some of my works that are being seen now are works that I've done in my undergrad, and
mm,
now are being published by good magazines. And those are the works that I've done. I've this series of that I call it the century, which is the death bodies and everything. I
hmm.
remember I started them when I was an undergrad student. And as if you go back to see my older works, you see that I've made just one single image several times to get it to the point that I'm happy with, instead of
Hmm.
just making something and try to push it to squeeze it into the art world. It's sort of impossible. You can make work, you can criticize yourself, and you can work on the quality of your work. And it gets to the point that the work finds its own way. You don't have to push for it. And I've been convinced about it. Like nowadays, I'm having a great opportunity meeting with people in New York or getting solo museum shows that I didn't ask for. They came, they found my work.
Mm.
I was talking to a print friend. She was really kind, she was really supportive, but the way that she found my work was really, really interesting. She said, I found your image in a website that they didn't even mention your work. I
Mm.
saved the image, I Googled it, and that's how I got to know you and your name, and we're now really good friends. But it was really interesting that how a work can speak for itself without you being behind it or even push for it.
Mm. I love that. I love that because I think that there's so much advice and so much culture right now around like the hustle and around marketing yourself and oh, you just need to write a program that posts on your Instagram 3 times a day whether or not it's any good or not, and like that idea that you can kind of skip the heavy lifting of making something good is really prevalent, I think, in all walks of life. And when I started the podcast, I had an idea for making something that like all I wanted to do was make something good. And now it's been listened to like almost 1 million times. So
Yes,
but
exactly.
I never really had this idea of I'm going to in this really structured way, like chase this, chase that, get this, network with that person, make sure this person's listening to it. And I think that for one, when you're not doing that, when you're not doing the hustle
Yes.
in that way, and not that you don't have to like hustle a bit, right? You can't be a hermit, but yeah, it frees up so much energy for trying to make something good when you're
Exactly.
not trying
That
to
is the
skip
point.
past making something good.
That's exactly the point. That yes, you want to hustle, that's fine. Make something first that's presentable, that you
Mm.
are at least happy with, and hold on to it for a few months, because there's been moments in my life that I'm super happy with the work. I set it aside, I work on some other things, I expand my knowledge, I go back to the work, and I don't want to look at it. It's not representable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that this is how a work can evolve. Like, not getting enough of just doing something, not getting happy with just making something, and that's all you have. It's better to have more options to present instead of just making one and try to push it. And then it gets to the point that it's not going anywhere and you don't have any other thing to replace it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, we're actually already have almost been chatting for an hour.
Oh, really?
So I
Go ahead.
know.
Too much.
I know. I've always found you so easy and fun to talk
That's
to. So
very
this is like such a treat. Yeah.
kind. I don't talk a lot with people. And once I find an amazing person that I can have a good conversation with, I really can go for hours and hours without noticing the time.
Yeah. I think that's such a gift for meeting people and connecting with them is when I actually, I often take a lot of notes before an interview. I like really research people and I do all these questions and I know exactly like what I'm going to ask them. And I didn't really take any for you because I just was like, we're just going to sit down and it's just going to happen. It's like, I know him. This is going to be fine.
I'm glad
Yeah.
that it went like this, because I didn't prepare for it either. Like,
Yeah.
that I knew that it's going to be broad, it's going to be about everything, print will be included. But when we say we're making art, it can be print, it can be painting, it can be anything, as long as you know what you're using and why you're using that medium.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. Well, Medhi, where can people find you and follow you and see your work and learn about museum shows and just be a fan?
Uh, I appreciate that. I am on Instagram, and my page is Mehdi Darvishi Studio. Plus that, I recently launched my website. It's still not in a good shape. It only has just a bit of my portfolio, but I'm working on it, and it's still the same name, mehdidarvishistudio.com.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm trying to add my sculptures to it. It takes a little bit of a time to take good pictures and make them representable. And
Sculpture, documenting sculpture is a completely different thing than documenting a print.
absolutely. So I'm
So,
working on a website, but I'm mainly accessible in my Instagram. That's Mehdi Darvishi Studio. Yeah.
great. We'll put links to both of those in the show notes. And thanks so much for letting me steal an hour of your time
Sure.
away from the studio over at Gutenberg. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to sharing this conversation with everyone.
Same. Very nice to speaking with you, and I look forward to listening to the podcast and hope that the print friends enjoy it too.
If you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help us keep the lights on and get bonus content, like Shop Talk Shorts, where our editor Timothy Pauschak digs deep on materials, processes, and techniques with past guests. Also, if monetary support isn't in the cards right now, you can leave a review for us on your podcast listening app of choice, or buy something from one of our sponsors and tell them Hello Print Friend sent you. But as always, the very, very best thing you can do to support this podcast is by listening and sharing with your fellow print friends around the world. And that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Gemma Tricky. We talk about growing up in a suburb of London in the late 90s, early 2000s music scene, working long hours in the TV industry, her short stint as a custom curtain maker, being in love with history, and being at the whims of the algorithmic gods as a contemporary artist. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.